Evening.
All right.
Should we have a background tonight? What do you think?
should we go for that as we're going to discuss all things Gaelic for the next not Gaelic,
yes. No,
Gaelic.
I think we will tonight. I think we will because I think we'll this is a personal kind of celebration of our affection for Hela, our tough love for Hela.
Yes, it does.
Sometimes it is quite
like
tough,
that, doesn't it?
It is a little bit like that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's. I would describe it as a Gaelic midweek rendezvous.
Yes.
So before we launch
incidentally, I had a very French. We had a very French evening meal as well, which was we had fish à la meunière, which was absolutely delicious. So it's a properly French evening, and the only thing that's missing is a glass of red, which I've told everybody to bring along. I haven't got a glass of red. I've got a bottle of squash and a coffee. So which I feel like
I've got a large mug of barley cup. So
we're sort of letting people down, really. But anyway, so tonight we're gonna talk about the glory that was Hela plastic model kits, and that maybe
it could still be a glory yet to come, but we'll get into that. We will get into as I wrote in that MAI op-ed, how mercurial they are.
Yes, I think that's probably a fair comment, to be honest.
Yes. Anyway. I mean, whereas Aurora, absolutely bonking mad, right?
Yes.
But Hela, mercurial.
Hela not bonkers. Hela just maybe slightly unlucky and have fallen foul of commercial constraints that were slightly out of their control. Who knows? Anyway, enough of all of this French nonsense for a wee while. What have you been up to this week? And are there any news items that we need to sort out before we get cracking on the discussions?
There are. We have, first of all, we'd like to say a big congratulations to Malcolm Childs. Now, Malcolm Childs is the brainchild behind Models for Heroes, which is a charity that was set up to help ex-service people who may be suffering with mental health problems, PTSD rather, and therapy through modelling. Last week, Malcolm was awarded a Points of Light award by the British government, which is an absolutely fabulous achievement. And I think is that on the screen there? Can you see that?
It is, yeah.
And it says, Malcolm Charles from Newbury founded Models for Heroes, a charity helping over 400 armed forces veterans a month through rehabilitation and treatment for PTSD, anxiety and injury, by providing them with kits for model building. We've put a link up on the Facebook page, but we often talk about, what people do to promote our hobby and to promote the positive aspects of our hobby. And well, Malcolm had an idea and it's just been a huge success, and he's doing a lot of good. Yeah. And actually it shows how our hobby can do a lot of good as well. I know before the show we were slightly focusing on some negative things today, but this is an absolutely fantastic achievement by Malcolm. Who's probably watching. If you are, Malcolm, I think from everybody at Interesting HQ, and I think everybody who's watching tonight, will give you a hearty congratulations. This is an award that is well deserved.
It absolutely is, and it's astonishing how far he's pushed this, really, from very small beginnings, and I think the hobby and the industry are really proud of what he's done and the way that he's approached it. And we can sort of speak, I guess we can speak from experience, not of dealing with people that Malcolm has to deal with on a regular basis, because that's on a wholly different level. But we've certainly found that by doing this over the last 12 months, it's helped to sort of bring people together when otherwise they might be struggling. And we've sort of seen it firsthand and had people contacting us and saying, well, thanks very much for doing that. Thanks for all those kind of things. So certainly just sort of bringing everybody together and just using the hobby as a kind of, I guess, almost an emotional crutch, really, when people are struggling. It does show. But Malcolm's on an entirely, like I say, he's on an entirely different level of commitment to us. We do a couple of live shows every week. Malcolm is doing this week in, week out, sourcing materials, sourcing kits, and actually making sure that they go to the right people. But I know from in the town I live in was the had one of only 2 combat stress units in the UK, and they had a weekly. Our model club got together and provided them with kits, and they did find that it was really useful just to have that sort of focus on something small in front of them, where they're sort of, it allowed a little bit of control, and it just goes to show how wonderful the hobby is, and how it can, how it really can help. I guess like anything artistic, whether it be music or whether it be painting or all that sort of stuff, and so very proud of Malcolm, absolutely superb and very, very well deserved.
Yeah, we will get him on the show at some stage.
Yes,
and also, we have shared his videos in the past, but we will, now that we can do this, we should be able to kind of like share the videos a bit better. But it is fabulous charity. Congratulations, Malcolm, and if you want to support something with surplus kits, decals, you name it, Models for Heroes.
Yes.
So absolutely.
In fact,
fabulous.
Normally I have my Models for Heroes mug, but I haven't got it today. I've got my Playing Drums mug, but Malcolm had done all sorts of things like that. Fundraising with selling mugs and all of that. Anything that you can do to help. If you've got excess kits, and let's face it, we all have.
We might have one or two.
Let's think about that.
Fabulous. Also, another bit of news is just before we went live on the air, had a message from our friends at the Froome Model Centre in Somerset to say that they have just had a consignment of fine moulds kits have arrived, and I do believe they are acting as the UK distributor for fine moulds. So hopefully we will be featuring some of these fine moulds phantoms on the Interesting Modelling Co. show and on the page as well. In the meantime, if you keep an eye out on the Froome Model Centre Facebook feed and also on their website, they will no doubt be putting up information about these kits being available very, very, very soon. So if you head over to froomemodelcentre.com, they will no doubt be putting the stuff up there for them in the next couple of days. But I'm curious to see what these kits are like, because they have been, it's fine moulds. Who isn't curious about fine moulds? But I know you certainly are. So I get the funny feeling you're going to be building a Phantom in the next couple of weeks.
Apparently so.
Yes.
Apparently so. I may well be doing something I've wanted to do for a while. I'm building a Japanese one.
Very, very nice.
Yeah. But not in a bonkers color scheme. I think I'm going to do the one I really love, which is the one with a stylized eagle on the tail, the red and blue eagle. I think that's what I'm gonna do.
Well,
so looking forward to that.
Yeah, the thing is, funny enough, as I was doing some housekeeping today on reference material and just, I've got this folder marked aircraft pics on the Mac, and it was like, right, let's sort them out into what they are. And one of the ones I came across, a Japanese vampire T11.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Blimey.
It looks real. A vampire T11 in Japanese markings looks really, really,
an actual
really nice.
Vampire T11, not a made-up scheme. Actual T11.
Whilst we're talking tonight, I will try and go online and try and find the image. But yeah, it's you know how Japanese schemes can make almost any aeroplane suddenly look really kind of like fabulous.
Yes.
This is honestly, you think to yourself, why didn't the Japanese fly more of them? I think this was just like a one-off. It was a trials aircraft, but it just looks brilliant.
I've I guess rather sort of senselessly at times been prone to making snap judgments, and one of those was that I believe genuinely that the Japanese Air Force post-war is the best collection of decorated aircraft on the planet.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
No one comes close to anything that the Japanese have managed to do with their aircraft. Literally everything they've flown has at some point looked drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah.
Even oddly, the F-15s, before they had squadron markings, just with the meatballs on them, looked amazing. But when you start seeing some of the aircraft, but it's not just the jets either. Some of the training aircraft look just sensational in Japanese markings. And P-3 Orions in particular are just glorious. So I think, although I build a lot of RAF aircraft, and RAF is always going to be my favorite, and grey and green camouflage with low vis roundels are by far the best. And I know we're going to argue about that in a minute when you say that's not true. They should be red, white and blue roundels. But Japanese aircraft, just beautiful. So really looking forward to doing something like that. And at some point, I really do think I need to do an F-15 in Japanese markings.
Japanese starfighters, need I say any more?
Japanese F-86 Sabres.
Yes. Yeah.
Japanese T-33s.
Well, you had that book before Christmas, didn't you? Yeah, you had that book before Christmas on the Japanese F-15s, which has just got some of those ones that are in that kind of blue camo. Just wow.
And it's almost like just for giggles, they say on a Monday morning, right, you know those F-15s that we painted last week?
Yeah.
I've got another idea for them. Let's paint them again and come up with something else this week.
Yeah.
They are beautiful, aren't they? Yeah. So, really like Japanese markings. So looking forward to that. And sort of takes me back a little bit to when the first Hasegawa catalogue I had, and there were a lot of aircraft in there in Japanese markings. And I thought, ooh, they look nice. At a time when you couldn't get anything in Japanese markings in the UK, pretty much.
Well, I can remember being in a supermarket in Wokingham when the first AA Hales imported Hasegawa kits started turning up.
Wow.
And it was stuff like the F-86, and it was things like the Fuji F1, was it?
Right.
Yeah, it looks like a two-seat Sabre, I always think.
T1.
T1, that was it. Yeah. And I always remember that. So welcome to tonight's show. What did you do on Wednesday night? Well, I tuned in to watch them talking about a French company, and all it was just Japanese aeroplanes. It was just
Japanese markings.
Was that the interesting modelling co? Yeah.
Although there's an argument that the best heraldry belongs to French aircraft, if we're really going down that particular route, as we may discuss later.
Yeah.
Really. So
right, you have finished an model, haven't you?
An other model, yes, indeed, I have. There it is. Yeah, the FX Tiger Moth, which I finished yesterday. Absolutely love this kit, and I really love the finished model. I have to say, it was that finish was certainly not easy to do. As I mentioned on Sunday, the day glow was very tricky to do, but I really adore this model, I have to say, and I think, sticking my neck out, I think that the Tiger Moth is one of Airfix's nicest 48 scale kits. It really is lovely to build, and it's got so many possibilities as well. You could buy there's loads of decals out there for all sorts of different versions of this thing. But it's lovely because, contrary to what somebody said before the show, it goes together like a dream. And I genuinely think that the model makers who've perhaps not had a go at a biplane would be able to build this thing. There are a couple of areas that sort of stretch you a little bit. One of them is, if you go back to the previous picture, you'll see in front of the fin are some anti-spin strakes on the upper fuselage. In order to fit those, you have to remove the area underneath where those strakes fit. Now, the Airfix kit gives you a little template, a little tool that's molded on the sprue, and you just sit that over the top of the fuselage, and that's your guide to where you take off the plastic. Dead simple to do. That's the only thing really that elevates this thing up into outside of almost beginner level. Everything kind of clicks together so well that the wings are molded in such a fashion that they're basically full span upper and lower wings. They're not molded in two halves. They're all, and everything just sort of slots together. It's very easy to build, but it's definitely one that I enjoyed. I spoke to my friend Harris Ali this morning about tiger moths, and we were sort of talking about other bits and pieces and everything. I genuinely think that 48th is about as small as I would go in terms of rigging a model, because this thing drove me really bonkers trying to get the finesse that I wanted, and trying to get all the rigging as delicate as I needed. So I really admire people who can rig a biplane in 72nd. And Harris just laughed and said, well, I've done it in 144th as well, which made me want to smash the phone. So yeah, it's you're building the 72nd scale one, so you'll obviously come across
as soon as I can get hold of one.
Yeah. Oh, are you struggling to get one?
No, I can get hold of one. I mean, it'll be a case of just ordering one.
Yeah, so, it's very, very nice. I have a feeling that I will be building another one of these kits at some point, because I really love this one, and I think I'm going to have a go at another one. I'm completely obsessed. I said this on Sunday. I'm completely obsessed with tiger moths at the moment, and so once I will be working on the Matchbox one at some point. And also I've spoken to Harris today. I spoke to him this morning. I'm actually going to do a scratch build of a World War I aeroplane, just to see whether I can. And that's my plan for the next sort of few weeks, just to see whether I can scratch build something. I'm going to try and do it in 32nd scale if I can. There probably is a kit available, but I just want to see if I can do something like that. So I'll keep you posted on how that goes. So I'm starting to get a bit obsessed with things that aren't made of metal, but are made of basically fabric and wood. So yeah, so that's the thing. I'm doing 2 tiger moths at the moment. Right.
Well, now then, I have found here. There we go.
There it is. Look at that.
Look at that. Doesn't that look fabulous?
Oh, good Lord.
Obviously, the cockpit, cockpit's a bit kind of, beyond the safety limits there. But wow. Doesn't that just look fabulous?
Yeah, that's really intriguing.
Yeah, really, really.
Did they only have one of those?
Yeah, I think it was just one that they might have tried out, and I'll look up the story of it. But I looked at that and thought, you know what, that would just look fabulous with the Airfix 72nd scale one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. And also, if you like the tiger moth, you're going to love the chipmunk, because the chipmunk is, if the tiger moth is there, tiger moth's very good, but the chipmunk is, wow, it's fabulous.
Yeah, you may recall that I laughed a little bit over your rather overwhelming enthusiasm for the chipmunk. I mean, you almost cried. It was truly sad to watch. And but having built this now, the chipmunk is something that I'm kind of warming to the idea of, given that it was the first aircraft I flew in. So I'm sort of warming to it a little bit, and I guess it's the natural progression, really, isn't it? Because it's basically a tiger moth without the upper wing, in terms of its kind of appearance.
Yeah,
I guess it's about the same sort of size as well.
Yeah, very small aeroplane.
Yeah, and talking of tiger moth, I did jokingly say the other day that I really fancied the idea of scratch building a tiger moth in 24th.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was I've already done it in 32nd. I've now done it in 48th. I should do it in 72nd.
You do have a book of Harry Woodman's scratch building.
I do, yeah. And I kept on sort of looking at it, thinking, well, I scratch built the cockpit in the ICM kit. It's not that much of a stretch to do essentially the same and then just clad it with, So I'm sort of thinking that might be kind of a cool thing to do, really. So we'll see. But this scratch building itch is not going away at the moment for an aircraft. It isn't going away, and I genuinely do want to have a go at doing something that's not a kit that's involved something else. So we'll see.
So before we launch into our Hela tribute, I don't know how we're going to word this tonight. Let's just say a big hello to everybody who's tuned in at the moment. So here we go. It is hello to Dennis Tennant, Stuart Bremner, Dave Fleming, Douglas Hunter, Anthony Bird, Dave Cowd, Ivan Jensen Taylor, Colin Strachan, Dave Swindle, Pavel Krupovich, Rob Herring, David Mummery, John Patrick Houston, Paul Milligan, Rob Monfee, Stephen Pryor, Vincent Murphy, Andrew Brennan, Brian Wilton, Wayne Vaughan, Darren McGuinness, Ian Colstraw, Claren McCullen, Claudio Saran Biondi, Jose Tiaxido, and Jim Carswell, Dave Fleming, Michael Scott, Douglas Hunter, Claudio. Oh no, we've done Claudio. Sorry, Claudio. Steve Moores, Vincent Blackburn, Johan Oliver. I think we have come to the end of the long list of. It's like the credits to a Star Wars film. This Tim Alexander Maunder, Mike Reeves. Good evening, Michael. Shane Weir in Australia, and Michael Hooverling. So fantastic. Thank you all for joining us tonight. As you can see, we are certainly a bit of a Gaelic theme tonight. Let us talk about Hela. We've both bought some Hela kits this week, and we're gonna have some honest commentary about what we bought.
yes,
Very honest commentary about what and this is the point. It's what we bought.
We did buy them.
Yeah, we bought them, but that's. To do a Dylan Thomas, to begin at the beginning, do you remember the first time you came across a Hela kit? And can you remember the first Hela kit you actually bought or built?
The first Hela kit I bought, the first time I came across Hela, I wasn't when I had the kit, when I had a kit. It was in an aircraft modeling book, which I think I've got somewhere around. It's a big hardback book that I was bought as a Christmas present. And in it, the majority of the book was about radio control, but they had some plastic stuff in it.
I know that book. That's a Marks and Spencer's book.
Yes, and in it there was an A4 page that had a picture of an SG A7 Corsair.
Yeah,
that's the book. Yeah, so we know we're on the same page as to what
I've got that somewhere.
Yeah, so have I. I couldn't put my hand on it, but in there somebody had built a French Air Force F-84G, the Hela kit, which is in there. That was the first time I came across the Hela as a brand. I thought, that's quite intriguing. And they'd done quite a nice job on it and all that sort of stuff. So that sort of got my mind sort of moving. I think that the first Hela kit that I bought with my own pocket money or my own money from cleaning cars was the Oregon. I think that was the one that I first had, the Dassault Oregon, and I actually tried to get hold of one of those this week and I just didn't in the end, and I changed my mind and I bought two other kits, which we'll see later. So that was the first one. So that would be the first one I actually built. The last one I built, and we were talking about whether I had photographs of any of my Hela kit builds. The last one I built was the Fiesler Storch. That was the final one, and I built that for a commission in about '94, and that sort of I built it, went off. I don't even think I photographed it. It was part of a little vignette that was built specifically for a set of white metal figures and a little German kind of truck or something that kind of went with it. It was put on a little circular base, and I remember that being quite nice. But I have bought a couple of them since then. But I went up in the loft today, and I certainly can't find them. The last one I bought though,
excluding this week,
excluding these two, the last one I bought prior to these two, I should be clear about that, was 48 scale Mirage 4, and I bought that 2 years ago. So Chris Summers had come to the club. He's got secondhand kit dealers that he travels around the shows when we're allowed to go to shows. He got one. He was selling one, and I think he wanted something pretty good for it, 15 quid or something like that. And I thought, yeah, I'll have that. I did what modelers always do. I thought I'll have that and I'll build it as soon as I get back. It's up in the loft somewhere. I tried to find it. I tried to find it today. I can't find it. It's in a box somewhere. But yes, that was the last sort of one I bought. But I've kept up to date with them, and I've had Hela kits over the years, which I'll discuss later. But they've not been a very big part of my own model making, but I think they're a very big part of the story of what we do. In terms of European companies, and I don't think they get the coverage, and they don't get the perhaps the plaudits that some of their kits rightly, I think, deserve.
The kits, yes.
The kits, yes.
Yes. The decals, we'll talk about in a while. I can remember Hela kits started to become apparent in the UK around about the same time. I managed to get a run of Airfix magazines, consistent run of Airfix magazines about 1978, 79-ish. So I think I managed to get 3 whole issues in a row, and then it disappeared from the newsagents again. Anyway, and Beatties in Bristol started stocking them. Now, as somebody of a 12-year-old of limited means, they were a lot more expensive than the Airfix and Matchbox kits around at the time. I mean, they were over double the price, 4 times the price of the Novo kits that I could get from the local bike shop, So I remember reading so much about them, about how they were this, almost like this connoisseurs range of kits, something quite upmarket. That's the word. So the first one I bought was actually a Spitfire Mark 5B. I don't know why I settled on a Spitfire when there were other exotic aircraft in Beatties, but I don't know. I went for a Spitfire 5B. When I got it home and started kind of opening the box, the first thing that became apparent was, yes, this was definitely a step up from every Airfix and Matchbox Spitfire I'd built at that point, because this one had an instrument panel. It had a seat on an actual seat frame. It had a stick. It had the floor with rudder pedals and everything. This felt like I'd suddenly kind of, wow, I've hit the jackpot here. Hela clearly are something quite remarkable. Unfortunately, I just couldn't afford to buy any more of their kits after that, because they were really quite upmarket at the time. So it wasn't until round about the mid-ish 1980s when there was like a local toy shop here, and they were stocking them. And by then, they'd obviously struck a deal with Humbrol, and the prices had started to level off a bit now. So, the stuff was quite affordable. So I then had a bit of a run on Hela kits around about the mid-1980s. In fact, one of the first Hela kits I returned to, and it's here from the display cabinet, where it has been in my display cabinet for over 35 years now. It's the little Focke-Wulf 56 Stoser, which I converted the markings on that. If you look, you'll notice some of the decals have fallen off over the years. It's because I didn't use a gloss coat, boys and girls. And also, it's a little bit, could do with a little bit of a clean and whatever. But that was it. I then built a couple more. I'm just trying to think what they were. I think I built the Block 152, which was a bit of a disappointment because that was one of their older ones. And then we kind of fast forward to about 1987, get my first job working for the local newspaper. I went out and bought myself a diaphragm compressor, the little Badger diaphragm compressor. You're kind of airbrushing and it's pulling you out the door as it goes walkabout.
Across the floor.
That's it. And the Badger 200 airbrush. And I had as a Christmas present the Hela Messerschmitt 109G, which this was the first model I airbrushed with my Badger 200.
Wow.
And the scheme was from an IPMS free magazine that I got from the first model show that I'd been to some 12 or 15 years prior to that in Wokingham when we lived in Berkshire. And my mum kind of took me to the local model show in the town hall, little knowing what direction that would take me in. And so I got this Hela kit, the 109G, and using the drawing in that, I built it as the one from that IPMS magazine. It's a rather unusual scheme because it had a black underside to the starboard wing. As you can see, as a 19-year-old, I was a little bit heavy with the weathering, but you're on a learning curve. When you're a teenager building models, weathering is a bit like aftershave. The more, the better. Exactly.
Oh, blimey.
I'm not saying those panel lines are a bit overdone, but you could probably see them from Scotland. But this kit is also still in the display cabinet because I took it out a few months ago and took some photographs of it. It's just one of those seminal kits that, to me, it felt like I had suddenly leapt forward in my modelling skills. That I'd gone from hand painting things and being essentially still the same modeler I was as a child, to suddenly I was up there with the big guns now. I had an airbrush, I had a compressor. Look at me, I've got a bottle of aftershave, and so I have great affection for that model because obviously it still exists. It's literally 10 feet away from me, but also great affection because it was Hela.
I have to say, somebody else has said, I'm always amazed by people who've got models that are that old. I haven't got anything, literally nothing that I've built prior to 2000. Everything is, and I've got from 2000. I think I've got 4 figures. The next oldest after that are about, I don't know, 2010 or something. So I do think I find it astonishing that you've got models from the 80s. I've got nothing from back then at all. I don't even have photographs of them.
I think this Stoser is probably the oldest existing model that has been on constant display that I have. I've got some of my armor models from 40 years ago up in the attic, but they're in a box and they're whereas that's that and the 109 have just been there all the time. And I have tried to revisit the Stoser and kind of messed it up, but we'll come back to that again in a while. Just a quick bit of housekeeping here. Rob Monfils says, and I've lost his comment because it's so far back now. He was talking about the vampire, and he said, "Oh, Rob, I wish you'd repost it because I can't find it now." Here we go. Rob Monfils says, 635571 T55 on display at the Japanese Air Self-Defense Sports Hamamatsu Air Base Publication Center at Hamamatsu Air Base, Shizuoka. It was formerly G514. So there we go. That's a little bit of history there from Rob.
I think the reason why we wanted to talk about Hela and is because they were so progressive during the 1970s. They were, when we compare them to other companies, Airfix, Matchbox, Revell, and Frog within kind of Europe, they were, to a lot of people, the best range of kits that you could buy. But they were eye-wateringly expensive. The Mirage 3s that they produced at the time were about 4 times more expensive than the comparable kits from both Airfix and Matchbox. Whereas the Airfix and Matchbox kits were about 80p each. The Hela kits were about £4, and that was an awful lot of money at the time.
A lot of money.
But what they did do is they also pushed the boundaries in terms of what was possible, sometimes successfully, sometimes not successfully, and that was by including within their kits, such as the Mirages, the Vigan, those kind of kits. They would give you options for 2-seat and single-seat versions within the same box, which was kind of unheard of with other kits. You'd have single-seat versions, and that was kind of it. But what that meant was that a lot of their kits were very, very complicated, and that had a knock-on effect, much like dominoes, had a knock-on effect that the complexity sometimes made them more difficult to build, whereas an Airfix or Matchbox Mirage 3 was quite straightforward. Hela 1 was not quite so straightforward, but they certainly pushed the boundaries. Where, though, they really started to find their feet and where they really started to make waves was in their creation of lighter aircraft, not the heavyweight jets, but where they were doing delicate French fighters, sort of pre-war fighters. They were doing kind of biplanes, not World War One. They never touched anything like that. But those kind of things. We mentioned before we came on, and I hope he's got the picture. The Caudron Simone, and it's a beautifully delicate little aeroplane that was never kitted by anybody else, as far as I know. May well have been done recently, but that was the kind of thing that they would create. And when they created them, they were offering things, as John mentioned earlier. They were offering full cockpits. They were offering, instead of a seat on a peg with a pilot, they were offering a floor, a bulkhead, an instrument panel, control column, and seats. So you had the sort of the opportunity to create something that was more detailed. And their surface detail was sort of more complete as well. They were really progressive, and they offered things to modelers that other companies just simply didn't. Like I say, more or less successfully. And then they hit a point where it was almost like there was a deviation in what they did. And I was doing some research on this week, and I was reading through an old Scale Models magazine, and David Jane had done a review in there of one of their 43rd scale cars. They did a lot of 43rd scale cars, but a lot of 24 scale cars as well. And he was doing a review. In fact, if you bear with me 2 seconds, I'll just grab it because it's behind me.
Well, while you're doing that, I will remember from that Airfix magazine period was a review. I'll just finish my story, Spencer.
Oh, okay.
I was filling in for you, like a professional, darling. I was filling in for you. It was there was John Rawlings did a review in Airfix magazine. It was of the Hela Arado 196, and I always remember his opening words were, "This is a Rolls Royce of a kit." And that makes a big impression on a 12-year-old, because you think, wow, he's a grown-up. He thinks this is a Rolls Royce of a kit. I must, clearly Hela are where it's all happening, man,
Yes.
And when I finally actually got around to building that Hela Arado 196, probably about 12 years later, it was when some of the Hela molds ended up in Mexico, and then they were polybagged to Revell. Very long story. I was not disappointed. Even by the standards of the early 90s, this was still a phenomenal little kit. Anyway, sorry, go on.
So I grabbed this. This is scale models from July of 93, July of 83. And within it, David Jane reviews 2 separate kits. He reviews the then brand new Mirage 2000, which they produced, whether or not that it was at a time when Humbrol were distributing Hela kits. But he also reviews in here the 24 scale Renault 4 CV, and he says in the opening sort of paragraph, and I'll quickly read it. It says, "It seems only natural that Hela should produce a kit of their country's latest military jet, even though they are not the first, having been beaten by both Eschi and Monogram, although of course these latter were both to a large scale. Hela have produced virtually all the preceding Mirage variants in 72nd scale, and in general this kit is an adequate replica to continue the line, but it could have been better, ... Then he goes on to say, Hela seem to be developing 2 separate standards in their kits of late. Their automobile kits are generally excellent in every respect, but their aircraft, particularly in 72nd scale, seem to be going backwards in quality, not forwards." He then says, at the end of the review of the 4CV, he says, "To sum up, this really is a superb kit that is satisfactory in every way except the tyres, and it deserves to be a popular choice for the car modeler. Even those who don't normally have much interest in Les Automobiles Français, shame on you." And I think that says a lot about where Hela got to in the early 80s and why they've struggled to maintain their reputation, certainly amongst our our sort of cohort of modelers who are specifically aircraft related, and they didn't really keep up with the times. But those car kits, and David is quite right in that, they were superb, and so were a lot of other things that they did. We mentioned on Sunday the Le Soleil Royal. The massive sailing ship that was 2,500 parts and cost about 150 quid in the 70s. It's, you know, they could create incredible stuff, but the aircraft almost became an afterthought. Whereas in the 70s, they very much weren't. They were very much front and center in what they were trying to achieve.
Well, this is the thing, is that going back to Scale Model World 2019. I keep wanting to say 2020, but Scale Model World 2019, and it was Dave Fleming. Hello, Dave, who's watching. He found, I think it was Hannants were doing some old model decal sheets, and one of the ones that he came across and showed me was for Uragans, which I'd never realised that Dick Ward had ever done Uragans, you know, in model decal. So I went over there, bought a sheet, came back, started looking at it, thinking, because they were about £1 or something. Started looking at it, thinking, God, this is fabulous! What a fabulous aeroplane! And I said to Dave, "Oh, when you're out and about, if you can find me, you know, an Uragan for a decent price, you know, grab one for me." He comes back, that'll be £5. Brilliant! I got a Hela Uragan. Now, I actually then went over to Hannants and got another sheet, because with model decal you have two, one to use, one to keep, and I didn't look at that Uragan kit.
So.
Yeah, apparently so. And I was convinced this was one of Hela's earlier jet models, because it was really clunky and crude and basic. You know, when I consider that, you know, my experience of those 70s Hela kits were that the undercarriage doors would be thin and they'd have detail molded inside them. You know, and everything, you know, there was all this detail. This thing, honestly, it just looked like a kind of upmarket Matchbox kit in the best sense of the phrase. Really surprised to discover it was actually tooled up in 1981.
Yeah.
And that was really when they started, for some reason, their aircraft range just, you know,
it just plummeted.
It stalled, to use a metaphor.
Did. Dave Fleming has mentioned the T4 Harrier that they produced that was marketed by Humbrol, along with two pots of acrylic paint, you may well recall, Bob Kit. The acrylic paint being gloss white and gloss black, which even as a youngster I couldn't quite work out the use for. But also the fact that it was an acrylic paint which was more like emulsion than the kind of acrylic that we use now. But that was the same. Joe Sacchi, when he reviewed it, said he couldn't conceive of a simpler kit, because essentially it was two fuselage halves, an upper wing. There were no pylons in it. The jet pipes were actually molded as part of the fuselage halves. I think there were individual rear wheels and outriggers. I think even the front undercarriage leg was molded as part of one of the fuselage halves as well.
Mike Reeves mentions, he says, I have the Bobkit C160. Now, there was a bizarre thing, is that Hela did a transall, but they included it as part of this kind of like easy to build range that they were aiming at kids, a 72nd scale transall, but as a snap together kit for kids. And it's like, again, this comes back to our thing about Hela being mercurial, because you go, question?
Yeah. Because of late they've started to produce newer kits. And when I was at Toy Fair 3-4 years ago, I got talking to the Hela rep, and one of the guys that was working on the stand, an older chap who'd been with Hela for years and years and years. And I was saying how nice some of the kits were, including the I think they'd done a VAB armored car, and I said, "Oh, that's beautiful. It's really, really crisp." He said, "Yeah, it's designed by the same guy who designed the Tamiya Leclerc." It was the same designer, so they'd kind of shown what they could do. That tractor that you bought, was it a David Brown tractor?
No, Ferguson.
Ferguson tractor. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's really lovely, you know. So they're sort of coming kind of back round, but even so, the aircraft is not part of that. At the 72nd scale, they did the 72nd scale Sherman as well, which garnered huge amounts of plaudits.
Yeah, I really must get hold of one of them. In fact, I'm just while you're talking, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I've just gone onto eBay because I've just found somebody who's doing a Caudron Simone, and I'm going to have another crack at that.
Have a go.
But I need to get one of those Shermans. But they're making a comeback of sorts post the divorce with Humbrol, which is checking with his legal team here. Can I talk about that? No, best not. That was acrimonious. I think
that was a really good sidestep. I think it fairly.
Let's just say the divorce worked out better for everybody in the end because Hornby got Airfix, and Airfix have just stratospheric, whereas Hela have just kind of like bumbled along really.
Should we mention the Airfix Concorde?
Yes, because
that's an interesting story, isn't it?
We'll mention the Airfix Concorde because it wasn't anything to do with Airfix. We're talking about Airfix back in Humbrol, so we're talking about this is going back 18 years ago now, and it was a Hela tool project, a Hela originated project, and in order to keep the costs down, apparently they sent the tooling off to about 4 different tooling shops. So one tooling shop did the wings, one tooling shop did the fuselage, another tooling shop did the smaller bits, and I had to build 3 of them. Should we move on?
Yeah, I think so.
All I can say is, thankfully, it's not in the Airfix range now. Revell have got it. Good luck, lads.
Yes. God. Yes. No. So moving on to sort of present day.
Before you move on to present day, this is the thing. This is the thing about Hela being such a kind of like a bit of a mysterious quantity in the UK, is that it wasn't until about the mid 1980s did I discover that they had a range of 35th scale armor. Never saw it in the shops in this country, and this is like pre-internet. Unless you had a Hela catalog, you wouldn't have known these things existed, or if you did, if they weren't currently in the range, you wouldn't have known these things existed. It wasn't until the round about the mid 1990s did I discover that back in the 70s they had a range of 72nd scale armor.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
No, that's news to me. I didn't know that.
They did AMXs, French armor vehicles. It was a real eye opener because I thought I knew Hela. I don't know them at all.
Well, they also did a lot of 50th scale, didn't they?
Yeah, they did 50th and 100th scale.
So, and I seem to recall having at least one of the 100th scale ones, but I can't quite remember which one it was. But one of the kits I loved the most during the 80s, when I was a teenager, so it would have been the early 80s. I had a 50th scale Alpha Jet that I made that they did, which I really liked, and I was doing a Jonathan and perusing eBay the other night for Hela kits just to sort of see what was out there, and one of those 50th scale Alpha Jets was up there, so you could sort of see it, and I thought, I wonder what that's like now, I wonder if how that thing would go together. But they certainly did. But the smaller ones, they did like Vortors and those kind of things in smaller scales.
Yeah. But they also did back in it was probably the late 60s, very early 70s. I know it was in Small Airfix magazine when it was about that. Airfix magazine was about that big. Yeah, exactly. And they did 1/50th scale Jaguars. Including the navalized, what was going to be at the time the navalized version of the Jaguar A. So people think that the first kind of like 48 scale Jaguar was the Eschi kit from about the mid to late 70s. No, actually, Hela were there almost a decade before with these 1/50th kits. But you see, again, this is this. Oh, I love them. I really do love them. But some of their decision making at times just has you banging your head against the wall, because while the rest of the world had settled pretty much on 48 scale, no, Hela 150th.
Well, the 50th range included some lovely light aircraft, didn't it?
Yeah,
Some civilian aircraft.
Fabulous aircraft.
Yeah, they did the Stamp was part of that. They did.
Yeah.
I was going to say the Piper Cub, but it wasn't the Cub. It was the other version. I
know what you mean. Yeah.
Whichever one is whatever it's called. But they did a few of those little kind of 50 scale things, and they may have done not the O2, whatever the O2 is called in civilian.
No, they did. Did
they actually do the O2? You know, so that those kind of kits were out there. You can still buy them if you go on eBay and places like King Kit. They tend to have a lot of these kind of Hela kits and everything. So their range was nothing if not eclectic and nothing if not variable in terms of quality. But for fans like us, fans of the sort of classic ranges of kits, and Harris, when we were talking earlier on, was sort of saying, well, you know, what period are you interested in terms of sort of model making history? And mine really is sort of 75 to 82. It's that kind of 6 or 7 year block, really. That's sort of, I think it's because that's when I came into the hobby. That's why I'm interested. But the Hela kits from back then were very good. You know, they were seen as being very good. They tailed off afterwards, but the cars sort of stayed. And in fact, while I was looking on Amazon had got I think might be a Renault Alpine 24 scale one. It's on sale on Amazon for about 11 quid. But part of the reason why, and we'll come to this in a minute, part of the reason why I thought the plastic might be good, but the racing markings might be an issue.
We'll come to that. We will come to that in a second. But I was just going to say the thing again, this mercurial thing with Hela. I mean, they did a 150th scale Puma helicopter as well. They were just, like I say, you got to that stage where there were established ranges out there now. You know, scales out there. So the rest of the world had decided, okay, then we are going to do 148 scale. We are going to do 144th scale. We are going to do 350th scale for ships. Hela go off on a completely different tangent. They stick with 150th, 125th scale, and 400th scale. And you think to yourself, if only you'd have gone, do you know what? You know, we are investing in our own extinction here. Stop. Let's get on board with what everybody else is doing and adopt these scales. They did eventually. I mean, they did eventually adopt 48 scale, but even up until what 18 years ago, they did the super Airbus. You know, the jumbo Airbus thing. Again, 1/125th scale.
Yeah,
and it's just like, why are you persisting with a scale where you're the only people who are doing this scale? It's
I suppose historically, the 150th and 100th scale did line up with other ranges.
Yeah,
for instance, had both of those in their ranges. They had a full range of 100th scale aircraft. They had a range of 50th scale aircraft before they settled on 48 scale. Nito had 100th scale, 100th as a scale as well. And so there were other ranges. But you're right what you say, that once other companies settled on scales that were more consistent with everybody else, it was almost, you can't help but wonder whether or not there was a slight belligerence to it. Well, we've always done it this way. We're going to stick with it. But I'm not entirely sure that it's as black and white as that. But certainly it does make you sort of scratch your head. I don't have anything that discusses Hela. I know there are some books out there, but I don't have anything that sort of discusses their process and their thought process at that period. It'd be interesting to sort of know more about the history of those kits and the choices that were made back then, because because despite the random nature of some of the scales, and 1125 is a little bit bizarre, although it does make that model huge, because it's big enough in 144. The kit choices were great. Scales were a bit iffy and were a bit off. So
I think my impression is that when Hela kind of like got into the 80s, they were just losing. They were losing direction. They were losing something.
Yeah.
They were then acquired by Borden Humbrol in the very early 1980s, and I'm going to be very careful with my words here, but I do remember reading it was Scale Aircraft Modeling of the time, commented on this because it was at the Toy Fair. I think it was Mike McAvoy may have been talking to somebody from Hela, and he said something about now that you have been bought by Humbrol Borden, and they said, well, we don't see ourselves as a subsidiary. We see ourselves as equals to, right? I know somebody who worked at Humbrol during that era, all the way from that era to the end of Humbrol in 2006. And he said to me, when we heard that, the alarm bells started going off, you see. And it got to the stage where pretty much it was almost a case of Hela were running Humbrol.
Mm.
And you know, there are books. I think Arthur Ward has covered the fallout in 2006. I'm saving that for my memoirs.
Yes, yes, I have a few of those memoirs as well that I've started to pencil in.
But it really was it was a political, as in small p. It was a political nightmare because you had two different work cultures. You had two different, for best way of putting it, you had two different kind of political cultures, and it got off on the wrong foot and never really got off on the wrong foot in the early 1980s and never really improved. You see, and we will come on to one of the aspects of this in a minute, which we're going to talk about with our purchases this week, because I don't know quite why we've suddenly gone down a Hela rabbit hole of suddenly going out and buying Hela kits, other than we just suddenly thought, let's go and buy some Hela kits.
Well, apart from anything else, the ones that we've bought, I don't know what yours was. The ones we bought, they were pretty cheap as well, apart from anything else. And the two that I bought, I had as a kid and built as a kid, or built as a younger person. So I was sort of treading on ground that I'd always gone down. So the first one is this: the F-84 Thunderjet is the first kit that I bought, and this was one that I built when I was younger, and I remember hand painting it with Humbrol aluminium, and I made it before I had an airbrush, and overall, I still rather like this kit. It's for the time, it's nicely detailed. It's still, I have to say, it is still stunningly well molded. There's no, given the age of this kit, there is no flash on it. It's sharp. Everything is neat and tidy. I've seen far newer kits than this look nowhere near as neat and tidy as this. So there is some really nice detail on this model. Also, the outline looks good. It looks like a Thunderjet. So one of the things that I do like about these new kits, about the sort of the reworking of these kits, was something that you touched on, I think, in your pop-up yesterday, and that's the instruction sheets for these. The instruction sheets are really, really superb, and that's the painting directions. Drawings are really nice. They give you plenty of detail, as we'll see in the second one. The drawings are almost good enough for you to be able to add all of the detail that you need to add just by the drawings of the foreview. So that gives you plenty of indication. You've got different versions in this kit. You've got a Danish one, an American one, and a French one, and then the second kit that I bought, and I'm skipping over this
Yes, well,
at the moment.
yes.
So the second kit was this one, and this one I definitely built, and is in the collection of one of the guys at the Model Club. It was on display at Cosford for quite a long time. If you remember at Cosford, they used to have a an outdoor building with a massive collection of 72nd scale aircraft, and this was, I left this one there, and it was painted up, but it was painted in the original colours that this kit was offered in, which I think was a blue French model. Now, I bought this kit with memories of it being really nice. I wasn't mistaken. Even today, this is a really lovely little kit. It's really nicely detailed. It's beautifully molded. It's got lots of potential for additions. My kit is molded in a very odd, sort of almost iridescent silvery blue color, which
Matchbox P51 silver is how I described it. It's that slightly pearlescent bluey silver swirly plastic.
Very odd
That my Matchbox P51 was molded in.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing, but it is very clean. And again, there's no flash on this thing. I mean, this is the tail rotor and the hub for the main rotor. It's beautiful for a kit of its age. It's really, really nice. And again, this is the sort of external engine parts variants of the engines there, which I don't think are entirely appropriate for the markings. Only one of the engines will be used, but you can see that the main rotor blades really thin. They're lovely, really nicely molded. So overall, this is a very nice kit. These are the drawings that are offered to put the decals on. Those drawings are so detailed that if I wanted to just add all of the external detail, all I do is copy the detail that can be seen on that. All of the aerials are on there. All of the sort of additions around the engines, and I think from what I've seen in the box, those drawings are almost kind of full size to the model as well. Aren't they superb? They're just really, really lovely.
Well, do you know what? I wouldn't even say those are the best Hela instructions, because the ones that came with my Sophia were even better.
Right.
Now, when a couple of years ago, when I fancied having another crack at the Stosa, I got one at a model show, and it was a black boxing like your Thunderjet. It was one of those boxings. And it's in the workshop somewhere. I shoved it into one of the cupboards somewhere. It was just pretty much one of the most depressing experiences I've ever had building a model.
Wow.
Because I opened it up and it was like, well, this really hasn't moved on at all. The instructions were still the original instructions. They were still printed on kind of recycled paper, best way of putting it. On the inside of the box, which was in that kind of like recycled cardboard, they printed some modeling tips, hints and tips. They printed it in dark brown on brown paper.
Oh God!
Right.
Wow.
And so anyway, so when my little Sophia turned up this week, and I did the live unboxing, I was absolutely blown away with the instruction sheet in that. It's modern, it's light. When I say airy, I mean it's got that nice kind of, it's not dense or claustrophobic. It's got a nice kind of feel to it. Just everything about it. And again, here's my Sophia. This is current Hela, because they've gone back to their old logo again, which, or one of their original logos again, which I think is quite nice.
Yeah, that's lovely, that logo.
Yeah. And, the back of the box is fabulous. Okay, it tells you everything you need to know, what paints you'll need. And also on the side, look at that. So this gives you all the, the stuff of what schemes are in the box. What a fabulous array of schemes. What could possibly go wrong? And the kit itself, I actually had to check and think, is there something missing here? Because there's the wings, and some of the other details. Again, molded in Matchbox P51 fluorescent bluish silverish plastic. That's the fuselage halves. Right? Now, you laugh, but actually, it's perfect for what you need. It's no more complicated than it needs to be. And in this regard, I think this probably has fewer parts than the Airfix Scottish Aviation Bulldog. And then you have the canopy. The canopy is lovely. And as I said in the video, at the moment, I'm struggling with that kind of million-piece canopy that goes with that Dora Wings Percival Proctor. Oh, what I wouldn't give for a single-piece canopy for that kit. I was, and as the video showed, I was genuinely really, really impressed. It was like, this is fabulous, Hela, compared to the depressing experience I had with that Stoser, with just everything feeling as though it was like, goodness me, you are stuck in the past. You need to move the product forward. You need to embrace the modern age. To open this lovely yellow box, walk into a model shop, you'll see Hela, because they'll be they've got a brilliant brand identity. The packaging is lovely. Prices are good. The kits still hold up. They're vintage kits, but they still hold up. As we say, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, before you move, I chuckled to myself because on the front of the box it says this kit contains 22 parts, and I was trying to think of another kit that I've seen recently that had less parts than that, and I can only sort of think about that Bobcat Harrier T4, really. I mean, 22 parts is just an extraordinarily low amount. But you're right what you say. What else does it need, really?
No.
And I really do hope you put this thing together. I really want to see this model made. But we come to the large elephant in the room, don't we?
The one thing that is actually, at the moment, delaying me doing anything with this model. Which is...
And that is the decals.
Oh my goodness!
The decals. Now, first, before we start, before we start, because
we are going to start,
right? I have to say that the decals, and Colin Strachan has mentioned this. The decals are not badly designed.
No.
From what I can see, the decals are actually really nicely designed, and they offer nice choices. They, in terms of the F-84G Thunderjet, they offer 3 different choices. The Security Civil, Securité Civil sheet for the Alouette is really nice. It offers all the trim and all of that sort of stuff. That's not the problem. The problem isn't the designer. The problem is that the printing of these decals is terrible. It is as bad as I have ever seen in a set of decals. These are the Swedish roundels.
That's what they are.
From the Sophia. They couldn't be any more out of register if they'd actually tried to make them out of register. That is awful. I sent John a picture of the roundels that are included, the French roundels, which must be extraordinarily galling for a French company, in that the worst thing on the F-84 sheet are the French roundels. They look like eyeballs. They look like my eyes on a bad night out. I mean, just look how off center they are.
Any more out of register, and those blue spots have actually appeared on my decal sheet.
Absolutely. But I also sent him a close-up, and this gives you an indication. That is the printing of the ink that's created the decal sheet for the American markings on the F-84. I can't quite work out yet, and only time will tell, as to whether or not that printing is so suspect on this sheet that as soon as I put that in water, it'll shatter, because that's the impression that I get from that. So the printing quality is, I mean, it's not even 1970s standards. Printing quality is 1960s standard. It is terrible, and consequently, when you get these kits, you're sort of taken by the sort of the vintage nature of them, and then your enthusiasm is initially, and I'll tell you why initially in my case, is initially crippled because, I mean, you can even see the letrotone almost. It's got like a letrotone effect.
Right.
Almost.
Well, we'll come to that in a moment with some technical stuff.
Just look at it. I mean, it is. It's taking the idea of offset printing to an entirely new place it should never go to.
Yeah. The one thing they did manage to print in register was the Hela logo. But you know, to go back to your F84 sheet, you see, this is the thing that now you see, without raking over the past, I can utterly sympathise with whoever's done those decals for Hela there, because one of the things when Hela were part of the Humbrol Empire was that Hela insisted that they print all the decals for Airfix. Right. You see, and so they printed the decals. And I mean, I've got upstairs, I've got the reissue of the Hawker Siddeley Domini, where the decal sheets came back from Hela. On some of them, the red spot of the roundel wasn't actually even in the roundel. It was that far off, right?
Yeah.
Now, you've got a situation here where, you know, I have not, for the best part now of 30 years, I honestly have not seen an improvement in Hela's decals. They seem to, I don't know where they've got them printed, but certainly under the Humbrol era, they insisted that these things were printed in-house, right? You see, I get quite angry when I see something like this, right? Because a very talented person has gone to a lot of trouble to research and draw and generate that decal sheet for the F84. You know, a very talented person has gone to all the trouble to come up with 5 schemes for the Saab Sophia, you see. They have gone to the trouble of paying somebody to research and design that sheet. There is an expense accrued there. They have gone to the expense of the materials to print it on, the paper. They have gone to the expense of employing somebody to print those decal sheets, you see. So you are kind of like, you know, you are building up an expense. What's the end product? Utterly unusable. I mean, you'd not almost fit for purpose.
It would almost be preferable if they took £2 off the price of the kit and didn't give you decals and said you source your own decals, because I mean, in terms of the printing, these ones, this is the sheet for the Alouette. These ones, from what I can see, and I haven't looked very closely at these, there's no issue with these decals from what I can see.
Yeah, they could be one color though.
They're obviously white, but they offer some sort of colored. Even the roundels, which are right at the top, are perfectly in register. So these ones are fine. The ones in the F84 are terrible. And so what I did when I bought these kits yesterday, and again, it sort of adds an expense, but in terms of what I bought, not a lot of expense. I just went online and thought, I'm sure Model Decal did something for these 2 aircraft. So I bought a Model Decal sheet for the F8 that had the F84 on, which cost me $2.99, and it had Jaguars and all sorts of stuff on it. And I just thought $2.99 for a Model Decal sheet. I mean, that just, you know, praise be. And then I bought a second one that had an Alouette on it, an earlier sheet. I couldn't find sort of too much. There are lots of decal sheets out there for 72nd scale Alouettes, Alouette 3s. So you can get them. But actually, these might not be too bad. But But when you get to the point when you're looking at a kit, and I remember those Airfix kits from that generation, the decal sheets in those Airfix kits were shockingly bad. I mean, they were awful from start to finish. There was a period when they literally unusable. I've got a Jaguar from that period that had a sheet that was printed around that time. It was so poor. I mean, you could see through the decal. It was just terrible.
Well, this is one of the things I was going to kind of like highlight here, because you're looking at this star and bar here. There's clearly some kind of reaction that's taken place there between the inks. This is almost like you know, when you put like if you applied a clear lacquer too heavily over enamel paint and it cracks.
Yes, that's exactly what it was like.
Also, it appears that they printed the red over the blue rather than printing the blue over the red. So the print order is out there for some reason. You can see that the red is overlapping the blue there. Well, you don't do it that way. You print, you know, you print white, and then, you know, you have an order for printing. So that should be white, then the red, then the blue. The blue, you can see actually that there is the trap just at the top, within that kind of at the top of that point of the star. You can see the red trap that is supposed to go underneath the blue.
Yeah,
but that's been printed the wrong way around. But that appears to be screen printed, you know, using solid colors, whereas these are litho printed appear to be litho printed using 4-color process, which is why you can see the half toning going on there.
Yeah, which
some people described as they call it dot matrix, which grinds my teeth because it is nothing of the sort. That is, you know, when you're printing magazines, books, whatnot. That's how you get color. It's 4-color process. Everything's made up of various sizes of dots and things, of halftone screens. So these appear to be process litho printed. That would certainly explain why the colors are so hopelessly translucent as well. You look at this Norwegian roundel here. Now clearly there's supposed to be the reason why you've got a yellow surround is because it eats into the red on the paint scheme. But there doesn't appear to be a trap underneath that yellow. So you can see you've got a white trap under the U. You've got a fairly bold yellow. You haven't got a white trap under the roundel. So you've just got this insipid kind of lemon yellow color. I don't, you know, and there is no point in putting that on the side of the box.
No.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You've decorations provided for 5 schemes. Can I use them? No. What's the point? Right. And I honestly, it does make me angry, because if you're going to do this, do it properly. If you're not going to do it properly, then either reduce the number of schemes so that you can do it, or you know, you try and address the problem. And unfortunately, in all the years that I've been aware of this, because I was somebody who was designing decals that were being printed by Hela and they were coming back completely unusable. Is here we are in 2021, and still it appears nobody is taking, I hate to use the phrase, nobody is taking ownership of the problem.
No.
Somebody somewhere thinks that is acceptable.
Yeah.
And it clearly isn't. And it clearly isn't that when you look at, you know, almost every other kit company out there, Airfix, Italeri, Revell, you know, they're either using Cartograph or they're using Zanchetti. You've got Tamiya. I think Tamiya sometimes use Cartograph, or they're getting them printed in the Far East, but they're still quality decals, you see.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a Tamiya kit with decals like that?
No, it would just never happen. And you know, and you're absolutely right when you see it. You know, there may be issues, and we spoke about this when we were talking about the tornado last year. There may be issues with Italeri's decals in terms of absolute accuracy of those decals, but you can't fault the printing. The printing is literally flawless.
Yeah.
I haven't had an Italeri decal sheet come back that wasn't perfect. I mean, literally perfectly printed. Never had one out of register. I've, you know, certainly not the current generation. Never had one out of register. A Tamiya decal sheet that wasn't in register. It just wouldn't happen. Never. the Airfix decals are the same. Literally would not happen. Wouldn't pass QC. It would be out of the door, and they would be binned. I would imagine those companies would have got to the point now they would rather delay a kit's release than allow it to go out of the door with something as fundamentally important. We're not talking about an instruction sheet that is off in terms of printing, where you've got ghosting around the designs. We're not talking about that. We're talking about something that is fundamental to the design and supply of the kit, and that's the decal sheet. That should never, in the 21st century, that should never have passed through quality control. Should never have done that. Now, like I say, I've decided, because I like the kits, the two kits that I bought. That's why I chose to buy them. I like the two kits. I took an expedient way around it. I bought a couple of model decal sheets. So what that means is that these two kits can be built, and they are fully retro now, because not only am I building them, I'm going to decorate them in model decals that would have been released around about the same time as the kits. So I think that's kind of a nice project. But that's not to suggest in any way that I think that that's acceptable, and that anyone else who buys one of these kits, and let's be honest, and we did say this, that is a beautiful little package.
This is the thing that really annoyed me, and not upset me, but it did just really make me angry, is that they've gone to all that effort and they've said, decals, let's have 5 schemes of that, Sophia. Why not? Let's, do 5 schemes. Are you going to print them properly? No. They're almost treated as an afterthought. At the very last hurdle, that they've done all this. It would be like, to use a metaphor, it's a bit like somebody saying, we need some visual effects for this film. It's fine. We'll get the guy who builds the models for Industrial Light and Magic. Fine. And we'll get it photographed by Industrial Light and Magic, and we'll get them to do it. You see, right? Well, who is actually going to do the composites, the matte composites of all the different elements? Oh, don't worry, we'll do that in house. You go to the cinema, and exactly. Could you imagine that? You can imagine that you've put all that expense into building the models and doing the photography and everything, and then in the end, it's been handled by a company where the mattes are so badly out of register that there's a huge great matte line one side and the other side is translucent. And I seriously don't get it.
No, I mean, I obviously, up until last year when I was editing, I was I work for a company. And I am in the hands of that company in terms of the product that goes out of the door, because I'm paid by them. However, as many of you know, I do my own books, and I've got a printer that I rely on, and they are really good. Now, a couple of years ago, I released a book on the Sea Fury, on the Airfix Sea Fury, and I reprinted it. I sold the first block, and then I reprinted it. I did a limited reprint, and when the reprints came back, they were slightly off. The front cover was slightly off. I could tell it wasn't printed as well. And I paid for them. So I contacted the printer and I said, I'm really sorry to contact you, but the front covers don't look right. They're slightly smudged. There's something about them that I'm not happy with. And they said, right, we'll reprint the run for you. And they reprinted the whole lot. And so I had 2 blocks of these books that I had reprinted. Would you like to know what I did with the first block? I pulped the lot, threw it out, threw it in the bin. It never saw the light of day. I had I don't know how many there were 50 or something I had printed, and they're not cheap to print, but I had 50. Now I could have said, right, well, what I'll do is I'll keep those and I'll sell them at a lesser cost to people, and I'll sell the higher quality ones. No, they all went in the bin. They went in recycling. I didn't want them to see the light of day, because if you want people to think that you're producing a quality product, you sell them a quality product. If you want them to think that you're peddling crap to them, then that's what you produce. And that's the thing. And I think in this case, with these 2 kits, your overriding impression isn't going to be the plastic or the box or the instructions, which we've been openly pleased with, from this. It's those decals. It's a bit, it's like going out for a meal. The first couple of courses are great, then you have a pudding that's really bad. What do you remember, the first couple of courses, or do you remember the pudding? You remember the pudding because it wasn't that great.
Yeah.
And so I really think that they aren't going to be watching this, but if anybody knows anybody it feels to me like they're producing down to a cost rather than sort of producing up to what they need.
But I don't get it, because they are clearly image conscious enough that they have given the whole brand a refresh. They everything about that Sophia is fantastic. The new instruction sheets. Okay, look a bit like Airfix, but everything about it is like strides ahead. This is Hela marching into the 21st century, and you want to cheer them on. You want to think this is brilliant.
Yeah,
and then boom, it just hits that. And I tell you what, it's funny. Oops, Daisy, I'm just getting my feet caught up in me things here. Well, it's funny you say that about afterthoughts and stuff, because this was one of the things that when Hornby took over Airfix, obviously I'm not talking on behalf of the company, but for the first year or so, there was still this humbrol hangover with regard to not wanting to spend any money on the decals, you see. And that wasn't a Hornby decision, right? Being very diplomatic here. Once the feedback started coming back to say, well, it's nice to have all these kits, to have kits, new kits coming through, but the decal printing is terrible, you see. And they were being done I think some of them were being done in India. I think some of them, they were litho printers. Some of them were coming over. They just had a single solid varnish over the sheet. You had to cut.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it was at that stage that, it's a name, a name that's all in our minds and our hearts at the moment, which was Daryl Burge. Daryl went, well, that's not good enough, is it?
No.
And I had a conversation. I said, well, it's not, because this is just terrible. What can we do about it? Well, let's go to people who print decals quality wise. You see,
and that's one of the thing.
They struck a deal with Cartograph. You see,
and that's one of the things Airfix have done with their vintage classics range, which Hela so obviously haven't done, is that the original kits within the vintage classics range had decals that weren't very well printed. They were from the 1960s and 1970s. So what people can do now is they can build those vintage kits with 21st century Cartograph printed decals. I assume Cartograph. Yes. Is that right? Cartograph printed decals. So it's exactly the same schemes within those kits as were in the original kits, because that's part of the brief. But the decals are 21st century in terms of their quality. And if these kits were like that and treated in the same way, we'd be jumping up and down. We'd be like, great, yeah, we can get these kits again. But I think what the last 45 minutes has done, has hopefully given the impression of to anybody that's watching this, is we've bought these kits. They haven't been sent to us. We bought these kits for this show, actually, and so we're not pulling punches in terms of the quality of what's in these packages. Now, I have every intention of building both of these kits and building them shortly, actually, when I get the decal. So I will show you what the models look like. That's my intention. I didn't buy them to sit and put in the loft. I've actually bought them to build. So hopefully you'll build yours if you can get some decals.
You said that we bought these kits as we were live on air. I between you and me, I bought another one.
Oh no! Oh,
Yeah.
there you go. Well,
I bought another Cordron Simone. I just thought, I really, you know, don't care if the decals in that one are terrible, because I've got Jean-Pierre's sheet for it. And Jean-Pierre's sheet for that, I'll dig it out and show you some of that. It's
yes,
fabulous, you see.
yeah. And I'm hoping as well that the model decal sheets that I've bought for both of these will be absolutely lovely as
They'll
well.
be usable. They will be usable.
Yeah, they won't be brilliantly printed, but they'll be what they are.
See, Andreas makes a good point here. He says the decal options in the Sophia are all the same as the earlier issues of the kit. The research for those options was done in the 1980s. The Swedish camouflage version is actually wrong for the kit, since number 75 is actually a 4-seater. The kit only has 3 seats, which again, in that case, then it's almost as if that they're not even refreshing, coming up with new artwork for the sheet. Could it be they're still using original color separations from the 1980s to print these things? And this is the point, is that when Airfix came under Hornby's ownership, they immediately identified a problem, which was these decals are not, the printing of these decals is not good enough. You see, and Hornby sorted that out, right?
Yes.
And and I don't want to kind of blow my own trumpet or anything, but you buy an Airfix kit these days, you are buying aftermarket quality decals from start to finish. You see, I'm not going to be immodest about that.
That is the decal sheet that comes with the Tiger Moth.
Yeah,
that is aftermarket quality in terms of printing and in terms of what you get. You would happily, maybe not happily, but you would buy a sheet like that, and it would cost you over 10 quid for that sheet and the instructions.
That F84 sheet, that's an aftermarket quality decal sheet in terms of the research that's gone into that. In fact, I'd almost say the research and the design of that sheet probably actually puts some modern day aftermarket sheets to shame, because it has been thoroughly researched.
Yeah.
But all that effort lost because of the printing, and I sympathise with. I mean, I don't know how old this artwork could actually be going back 25, 30 years, but I sympathise with the fact that somebody did all that, and then it got to the printing stage, and it's almost as if nobody cared from that point onwards.
Yeah.
And that I think is the thing that really makes me angry, because these kits deserve better, because
it might not be that nobody cared. It might be that there's nobody there because of budgetary constraints. There's nobody there to see it. There's nobody there to check these things out. Who knows? We don't know. Anyway, so
it's just fabulous. Look at it. It's just that is such a beautiful. Look at that! Wow! 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 Isn't that brilliant?
So basically, we have 3 little Hela kits that we're going to have a crack at. I think is although it looks like I'm going to be having a crack at a Fine Molds F4E.
Well, I'm going to dig out my other. I'm going to dig out that, because I started one of these again about 3-4 years ago, but I started trying to be clever, and I thought I'd rescribe the panel detail on the wings and try and make it accurate, and I ended up making a complete Horlicks of it. I also tried doing it with the Cordron Simeon, and I tried rescribing all the panel lines on it. Big mistake. I should have just done a Mike. Well, I tried to do a Mike Grant. I'm not Mike Grant. So I think what I might do
of us are.
Yeah, unfortunately, with the next Simeon is I might actually either sand it smooth, or I'll just leave the raised panel lines on there as a period feature.
I have a feeling that I might do exactly that with these two as well, rather than sort of as I'm rescribing a 32nd scale Tomcat at the moment.
Which Mike Reeves says get a wiggle on with that, by the way.
Yes, I saw what he said. Yes, indeed. Right, any other business, as it's now 9:10. We've kept these good people for far too long.
No, I think that's it. It's like I say, you and I, we've been harsh tonight, but we have been fair. We genuinely have a love for Hela, and we do genuinely want to see them up there with a quality product from start to finish.
Yes,
and it's just so heartbreaking that they get that far. They get to within the penalty area, and then they kick the ball towards the corner flag.
They do, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and freeze my bank card in a tumbler of water, so that I don't go out and buy the Paris bus that I nearly bought the other day, because I thought, oh, I really do fancy having a crack at one of those. But I do think I like the idea of building one of those, getting hold of one of the. I remember building the 43rd scale Land Rover, was one of the 43rd scale kits I had, and I tried to get hold of another one of those, but I couldn't find one anymore. So give that a go. But that, I think, wraps it up for this evening in terms of our Gaelic journey through history. I hope you've enjoyed this.
Oh dear. Just found Hela 172nd scale M4A2 Sherman Division Leclerc gift set 1141, free postage. Must resist.
See, this is what happens. He's just buying stuff. He uses these shows as a way of justifying his overwhelming addiction to buying plastic.
You see, we have been brutally harsh tonight, but then we're just like, but they're a bit like a football team. You're just like, you sit there and you got your head in your hands and you think, why do you do this to me? But you're there next week cheering them on again.
You had to mention the football, didn't you?
Well, what's happening tonight? Is there football on?
No, we're not playing tonight, thankfully. I don't think. Well, although Coventry are playing tonight. So when I say we, obviously we are playing tonight because we're playing Swansea. I haven't seen the score yet.
I think it could be argued we weren't playing when we played Everton on Saturday. Anyway.
So,
I can't think of any other business. I'm going to negotiate a Fine Molds Phantom for you.
Thank you.
So let you know what you want. I'm still working on my my Tamiya Panzer IV, which I'm enjoying greatly, because it's a Tamiya Panzer rather. So oh no, before we go, any other business? Yes, Jose Tiaxido was very kindly sent us some pictures of his Hela 72nd scale.
Oh, they're lovely, aren't they?
Aren't they gorgeous? And he says, up until when the High Plains kit came out, this was the best.
Superb, really superb.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So thank you, Jose, for sending those pictures through. Sorry, we almost forgot about until the last minute, but that is absolutely fantastic. And of course, you can do the same. You know, you can post pics to our Facebook page. So post for the up until Sunday's show. Post your Hela models, your Hela kits. Let's celebrate this eclectic, mercurial, bafflingly
inconsistent brand,
but utterly still quite charming and lovable kit company.
And of course, the cars, which were so lauded, don't have decals in them at all, other than number plates. So you could make a beautiful little French 4CV, and there's no decals in it.
On that note,
what's not to love?
Just remains for me to say thank you for joining us tonight. I'm off for my COVID jab tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that. No, I'll be fine. So that's it. Just remains for us both to say thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay out of trouble, and we will see you on Sunday. So on that note, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Good night, everybody.